Hey, shit. What's up? And today I'm going to do a review on the famous classic HBO crime TV show, The Wire. Started since 2002, my birth year, for 4 whole seasons. And we'll be covering season 1 today. So basically, The Wire takes place in the city of Baltimore, Maryland. We have the cops and then we have the criminals. And you can split both of these types of people into good and bad. There are bad cops, just like there are good criminals as well. So we have the main character, Jimmy McNulty, played by British actor Dominic West. Oh my gosh. I never knew that he's a Brit until I saw one of his interviews. His American accent is amazing in the show, although there are still a small tiny bit of flaw, but still, Dominic West nailed his role in the show. Fuck chain of command. And he doesn't even look British. He looks like an American cop with a low salary. And then we have his colleagues, including Bunk, Herc, and Kima. We have Cedric Daniels, his boss, Lieutenant, played by Lance Reddick. I first saw him in the Eric Andre show, out of all shows. So it's kind of funny. And then we have the impeccably huge network of drug dealers, suppliers, and managers, or whatever. We have the two big bosses of the gang, Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell, who's excellently played by another British actor, Idris Elba. We also have Avon's nephew, D, short for D'Angelo, and we have his colleagues like Bird, Weebay, or Stinkum, and people working for D, such as Wallace and Poot. Episode 1 is titled The Target, off to a slow but somewhat promising start. It's more boring than I had expected, not gonna lie, but not in a terrible way. It's not awful, but it's more Mad Men kind of slow, So D was in a trial for the murder of a guy named Snot. In fact, he did kill the guy, but he got away with it. But he's still a very good person, apparently. And one of the witnesses were in that trial, and he told the judge that the killer was in the room, and because of that, he ran into trouble. Meanwhile, D, he worked at the pits instead of the towers this time, which is a downgrade. At first, I don't know a lot of the terms they used in the dialogues. It's all gang slangs. Anyway, this is not too bad of a pilot episode, I suppose, but also not great. In fact, kind of weak. But yeah, I'm expecting more. Anyway, on episode 2, The Detail, we get more information, although the show still remains slow. First of all, Jimmy and a bunch of others joined a special team ran by Daniels just to get Avon's gang. Which is actually really tough and ambitious. Kima has a friend named was Bubbles, although he's a junkie and a scammer. He's also very smart, and he's a pretty nice guy who's willing to help the cops to go undercover into the drug-dealing areas. Towards the end of the episode, we have a more action-packed scene where 3 policemen, Carver, Herc, and Prez, went into one of the towers, I believe, and started threatening people just because they feel like it. And that's a really dick move, to be honest. Moving on to episode 3, The Buys. One of the colleagues of Jimmy, Sidnor, and Bubbles went undercover to the areas again, and that's really interesting. Another colleague of Jimmy's, Lester, also a smart guy, somehow found Avon Barksdale's photo. Another highlight would be the ending of the episode, where the crew stormed into the low-rises, which are basically the area the criminals do businesses in, and they arrested some random guy, whoever has dope on him. And The Detail only did it because of their boss Major Rawls. It really messed up their case. And there's also the scene where D explained chess to Bodie and Wallace. It's like a metaphor to this whole story. Also, I think earlier on this episode, Omar and his team went into the low-rises and robbed D's stash while D's out. And Omar's the bad guy. Confirmed? With a question mark. Episode 4 is Old Cases. The pace of this show is still very slow, and there are boring and uninteresting bits. But it's a slow burner, which means it's gonna get good soon. There's a scene where Jimmy and Bunk went into an old crime scene where a bunch of photos, and they figured out how was this woman killed. And in the whole scene, every line was like, fuck, fuck, motherfucker, fucking A. And that's hilarious. I think this scene might be improvised, even. And Prez, one of the cops who fucked up in episode 2, is actually a smart person, and he figured out the code and the patterns of the pagers of the Barksdale's gang. Next episode, The Pager, is where the show heats up and things get slightly more interesting. First of all, the whole pager system is figured out, and every time someone in the Barksdale crew pages someone else, numbers show up on a computer screen in the office of the detail. And then we have Herc and Carver arresting one of the kid who works for D, Bodie. They and Bodie kind of has a love-hate relationship in the show for some reason. Not the romance type, but the friend type. Friends who aren't supposed to be friends. It's kind of weird, but it's also very intriguing and realistic somehow. And at the end, Wallace and Poot, who also works for D, spotted Brandon in a game place. And Brandon is Omar's boyfriend, and then they paged D paged Stringer, and oh shit. Episode 6 is named after the series itself. It's titled The Wire. And in my knowledge, the only time an episode from a TV show was named after itself is Dexter, which is the pilot episode of Dexter. Anyway, picking up after where the show last left off, the aftermath of Brandon is brutal and it really messed Wallace up. And then Kima and Jimmy followed Omar and talked to him politely. I kind of like how it may seem like Omar's the good guy now, that he's on the police's side while the Barksdale guys are bad, but it's actually way more complicated than that. D is actually a good person, so is Wallace, or maybe even Stringer, who knows. Things get intense on episode 7, One Arrest. We have this crazy chase scene in the low rises. Literally, cops in cars surrounding the area and trapping a dude and arresting him. And that was a truly fun scene. And again, I like how Wallace was bugged out by what happened to Brandon. It makes his character even more human. Episode 8 is Lessons, and Jimmy sent his kids to spy on Stringer Bell in the market. And later on, Jimmy followed Stringer Bell to a college or something and saw him attending an economics class or something about elastic products and inelastic products. And in another scene, Stringer was talking to someone who works for him, and Stringer was like, "Don't make these products inelastic, man. They elastic. I'm serious, yo." Man, Idris Elba and his fine accent. And then there's the attack at the end of the episode. Didn't see that coming. Stinkum and Weebay, who works for Barksdale, got into huge trouble when they got ambushed by Omar. Things get a little more lighthearted on the next episode, Game Day. The East and the West Side Baltimore projects are fighting each other with a basketball game, and they do it every year, apparently. On the same episode, Omar tried to ambush Avon Barksdale, but kind of failed. And then Jimmy paid Wallace a visit, but at the end of the day, Wallace was a good boy. And overall, it's a pretty interesting little episode. Then it's episode 10, The Cost, and it's a heavy episode indeed. First of all, Stringer wanted to make a truce with Omar and then secretly strike back. But what's most important is the last scene, which is devastating. I'm giving a spoiler alert. Yeah, I'm sorry about the pianos. I already tried my best to quiet him down, but he insisted to play piano. Anyway, so Orlando was arrested. Orlando, you know him, he ran the club, which became the headquarters of the Barksdale team. And then Orlando was transferred to Cedric's detail, so that they set up a buy-bust where Kima played Orlando's girlfriend. And then something went wrong because Stringer and Avon were already suspecting that Orlando might be snitching. So they sent Weebay and Lil Man to kill him. And little do they know, Kima was there. And Kima got shot. And everyone came to the crime scene and it was a panic. And it was a bloody mess. Then it's episode 11, The Hunt. And it's basically the tragic aftermath to what happened on the previous episode. Jimmy was really bumped out because of that incident. Really. and it really showed how caring Jimmy was actually of a person. And then because of the incident, the police department wanted to force the detail to bring them dope on the table to show the world how cool they are. But in fact, the police department is corrupt and fucked up. Moving on to episode 12, Cleaning Up. Shit, this is a surprisingly sad episode. Wow. So because of that incident, Stringer is even more paranoid. He collected all of the crew's pagers and wanted to kill off everyone who might turn Stringer and Avon in. And I can't say anything more up till this point without giving another spoiler alert. I'm sorry, guys. Stringer thought Wallace might turn them in because of how good-hearted Wallace actually is. So Stringer secretly ordered Bodhi and Poot to conspire to murder Wallace. So Wallace came home one day. All the kids in the house were gone. Something's wrong. Then Bodhi stood behind Wallace and held up a gun. And Wallace teared up. And then Bodhi hesitantly shot Wallace, and Poot, with a painful look, killed Wallace with another few shots. And wow, that scene got my heart going really fast, because I really, really rooted for Wallace to live for some reason. But that's the price for playing the game. Wallace should never have left the countryside, to be honest. Damn. And then D'Angelo gets arrested, and I like how Dee and Jimmy didn't like each other at first. They're both good guys, though. And then when Jimmy told Dee Wallace was dead, Dee was like, "You lying motherfuckers." And then when Dee sees Stringer, Dee was heartbroken, because Dee realized Wallace was actually dead. And yeah, that's really heartbreaking as well. And apparently, the actor who played Wallace is Michael B. Jordan. Young Michael B. Jordan, so that's pretty cool. The season finale is titled Sentencing, which is another really simple, straightforward episode title. And instead of ending off the season with a bang, it ended off with a whimper, but in a satisfying way. This episode really concluded season 1 really well. Again, as the title explained, on this episode a sentencing took place, and Avon Barksdale is legally arrested. And the way Stringer Bell told Jimmy "nicely done" at the end is an amazing scene. It's very passive-aggressive. It's kind of sad, but exciting at the same time. And the montage at the end is truly the banger of the episode. We see everyone's life after this insane case had closed. And on episode 1, I think Jimmy said the job he least wanted to have in the department is the boat job. And at the end, Jimmy's boss assigned Jimmy to do the boat job, and that's just really sad. And the scene at the end with Omar pointing a gun at a random kid saying, "It's all in the game," tells us that there will be more events taking place. Overall, it's a pretty sweet and thought-provoking season 1 for a TV show this dirty and grim. Although it's a slow burner, it's extremely realistic and the storylines are solid. The dialogues are really well written and the characters also feel three-dimensional and interesting, and the acting performances by Dominic West and Idris Elba are real quality acting. My biggest flaw, my biggest disappointment for this show is that it's a slog at a lot of times. It's really slow and uneventful at first, but usually in every episode you'll get at least one standout scene where something slightly interesting happens. And my favorite thing about the show is that there are good cops, there are bad criminals and good criminals, and it's such a true depiction of the situation in Baltimore. So, yeah, the weakest episode is episode 1, The Target, and the best is episode 2, Cleaning Up. I'm giving The Wire season 1 a strong 8 out of 10. So, I know, the pianos, man, they're annoying. So, have you watched The Wire Season 1 from 1 to 10? How much would you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more. And also, if you're wondering why I haven't made the Twin Peaks Season 2 review, well, something tragic happened, and yeah, I'll tell you about that.